Okay, episode 136. Pete Priap, Dan Morse, the Morse Code Podcast. We're joined today by Paul Perillo, editor, patriots.com, aka sunshine.com. How are we doing, Paul?
I'm doing well, guys. How are you?
Good. Catch the game?
Hear about that?
Which game we talking about?
Yeah, of course. Sorry. Let me clarify.
It was
Revolution.
quite a week, actually a couple of weeks, but I thought, the Sunday night I thought turned out to be quite an event. It was. I kind of felt the whole way going through it was more an event than a big game, but it turned out to be both. It was a terrific theater. Obviously everything you want to two teams going at it. I thought it was pretty evenly played, and it came right down to the wire. So you can't really ask for more than that.
Were you at Gillette?
Yeah.
All day?
Yeah, we were there.
Nice.
Couple of funny non-game things. I don't know if you well, actually you were at the game, so you wouldn't have noticed, but the whole Steve Belichick phenomenon. I don't know if you saw that on the internet today.
Totally bizarre. No, we saw it live. Like when they kept showing it on the TV. It's just really strange. I don't know if he was like doing his John Gruden impersonation, trying to do different things, but that was bizarre.
When Josie's not working and Zoe can't get the crowd going, I think you throw Steve Belichick up there and tell him act naturally.
just be yourself. Well, it's weird. It was like every time they cut to him, like he was doing something. The mullet
game
weird.
Is strong too.
That's the default, but like just like every time, and eventually I think I said to my wife something. I was like, dude, like they're not doing him any favors. Like every time they cut to this guy, like he's gonna be in hell all night and all morning if he opens up Twitter or anything like that. But let me start here. So I understand you're probably gonna be talking about this stuff for quite a while. You probably have been all day already. But what were kind of some of your, I guess, key takeaways from the game, whether it's on the Brady side, the Mac Jones side, the Patriots side? What were some good things you saw and maybe some troubling things you saw?
Well, to me, the thing I found most interesting, really off the top of the game, didn't have a lot to do with the Patriots. It was more about Tom Brady and just how he looked. I felt like heading in, there was a chance that he would be a little overhyped. And I sort of went back and I thought of 2009, his first game back after tearing his ACL in 08. I remember that was the season that Coach Belichick was followed by NFL Films. And so we got to see some of the behind the scenes stuff that year. And that first night, that Monday night game against Buffalo, he was all jacked up and everything early in the game was high. And Belichick even had him on the side and said, all right, you gotta settle it down now. And he was all wound up. He was like, what do you mean? That the throw was right to him, was right in his hands. And then he was like, the one to Falcons, that one. So I kind of thought there was a chance that we might see that Tom Brady, and we did. And frankly, I thought we saw that Tom Brady for a long time, a lot longer than you did that night. He was really, I thought, affected by the environment, not necessarily, the pressure of the game. I just think that he really got wound up in an effort to play so well against Belichick. And I thought he was high throughout the entire first half. And then he settled down a little bit at times in the second half. The last couple of drives, I thought he looked a little bit more like himself. But overall, I didn't think it was a vintage Brady performance. That to me really stuck out, that he didn't really play his best game.
Yeah, I think this kind of notion's been around Tampa for a while this year. I've noticed. You could say New England too. A lot of drops, but just a lot of like what seemed like those cliche like Brady and his wide receiver miscommunications too. Like I think Evans had a couple. Godwin. I thought that throw to Brown at the end was one of the best throws I've ever seen. That one that would have won the game. Yeah,
the last one. Yeah,
like when you watch that from the angle from behind the end zone, that was a perfect textbook Tom Brady like 2-minute drive throw. But yeah, he did seem a little off yesterday. I think that's what Soapy and I were talking to. That's what I was looking. I think after like Wednesday or Thursday at that, and I'm sure you'd agree at that point, like I was just ready to watch the 60 minutes of football. Like, you know what I mean? Like the game, like I couldn't believe it when I saw, I think ESPN was at like 9 a.m. or so. It was like college game day pretty much. It was.
Stadium
exactly for an 8:15 game. I think Felger and Maz were doing something there too, right? Didn't they?
Yeah,
have
they were here. Thankfully, I didn't get stuck seeing them, but
Yeah,
it,
sure.
it was a college game day kind of atmosphere, and
Yeah.
we had some different events that we were doing, organizationally around. I actually talked to Rodney Harrison sort of in the middle of the day around 4 o'clock for something that we included in our pregame show on Patriots.com.
Yeah.
So it was not your typical regular season game. There was almost like a Super Bowl atmosphere around the game. And it took the better part of the whole first half before that sort of settled down, wore off, and you got down and said, hey, there's a pretty good game going here. It's 7-6, can go any way. From the takeaways from the Patriots side would be, sort of that old school, step up of the defense to hold that offense in check, for as long as they did, I thought was impressive. Now, you mentioned some of the things that were, at work. I don't think it was just about what Bill Belichick and his defense did. I think some of that was what Tom Brady didn't do and his receivers couldn't do. I thought Mike Evans had a bad drop early in the game that probably would have been a touchdown drive instead of a field goal drive early on. Like Cameron Brate had a bad drop in the second half on a potentially big play. They get a penalty that wipes out a bomb to Antonio Brown. So there were some things that the Bucs did to help out along the way. But the big takeaway for me is, if you had told me before the game the Patriots were going to keep them in check for as long as they did, I would have thought exactly what happened. They will have every opportunity to win the game. And they did. Ultimately, it came down to the last play.
Yep. Good. So,
yeah, I got a question for you, Paul. I didn't have this written down, but obviously now, it's been a season and a half, whatever you want to call it, of us being without Brady. If you could go back in time, did you think, because I did a little bit, did you think that he was falling off in that final season? Just because we didn't see anything to suggest otherwise, because that final season was not good between him and the young players and whatever, Sanu for a little bit and Antonio Brown for one game.
Yeah, I did. Frankly, I thought there was a 3 or 4 year gradual decline. It wasn't fall off the cliff, to use the Kellerman term that everybody likes to pick on. But I thought that even in 17, 18, now the Super Bowl in 17, obviously he's out of his mind, throwing for 500 plus yards. But, I didn't think that was a great season. It was a good season for Brady, but I thought small indications that, completion percentage dropped a little bit. I thought he was a little bit less willing. There were subtle things. They were a little less willing to stand in the pocket and take the hit and deliver the ball the way he had. You mentioned, Sophie, that the unwillingness maybe to work with the younger players as much as maybe he did earlier, not showing up to OTAs. And then I think it really culminated in 19, where they're 8-0. And we all kind of knew they were 8-0, kind of a paper 8-0. They hadn't played anybody. They were playing bad teams and bad teams without their starters at times. And they really beat up on them. Their defense was dominant, causing a lot of turnovers. And I think Brady knew that. I think Brady recognized that we're not doing a lot of this with offense, and this isn't Super Bowl offense. And, I think he made the comment, ironically enough, on Sunday Night Football before that Baltimore game that year to Al Michaels, that I'm the most miserable 8-0 quarterback in football history. And, ultimately it spiraled from there. They went 4-4 the last 8. They lose the playoff game, and they really haven't recovered since. The team itself has struggled since then. But I do think there was a decline in Brady, however, minor you want to call it. And then I was one of the people who wondered, can he get back up to that level? And he did. Down the stretch and into the playoffs last year, he certainly was vintage Brady.
That summer, when he put his house up for sale I think that was right after the final contract negotiations, right? Where he had kind of reworked his contract. Do I have that timeline right?
Yeah, it sounds about right. I mean, there was a lot of different timetables and the stories, but yeah, I think that sounds about right. The telltale one for me was, I think when we were in Detroit I think it was Detroit. It might've been Nashville. Those two trips they made in that summer, when he said, go ask Mr. Kraft, in a question about his contract and why he was no longer under contract or a pending free agent. And I think he was telling you right there. That's kind of the day that I said he ain't coming back.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. It was tough because that's such like just a strange concept to like verbalize. Like we have this guy in house and he's going into next summer technically unemployed at this time with the company. To me, that was at that point I was like, if nothing gets done mid-season, I just didn't say like, what's the difference? Like if they want to sign him, why wouldn't they just do it now? So I was surprised.
And I do think that you make a good point, Dan. I think it was mutual.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, for sure.
It was exactly how they talked to Phil Jackson in that final year of the Bulls thing.
Pretty much.
Dance, where it was like
just as crazy to verbalize and like say out loud. It's like,
regardless what happens this year, this is your final year. I don't care if you go 82-0.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, it was weird.
It's an interesting correlation that you made, and I don't think I ever really thought of it that way. But in watching that Last Dance, that there was a lot of, and I did think of it in terms of the Patriots, but I never really thought of it in terms of Phil Jackson, Michael Jordan, with that kind of way. But that's a good comparison.
Yeah, we talk a lot about that season. You said when they started out 8-0. I remember I forget if they won or lost this game. Maybe you do, but there's one game where I was watching. It was the Dallas game at home. Remember, like it was like rainy. It was a shitty night. I think it was like a 4:30 game or something. And I was just like, dude, these guys can't score. Like they're not going to score touchdowns.
Yeah, Dak Prescott was miserable that day in the weather. He clearly was not used to playing in that weather. And that's a game that vintage Patriots would have won something along the lines of 38-9.
Yep.
And they won 13-9.
Yeah. Like 3rd and 7s, 2 and 11s. I was like, dude, this is a turning point. And I think you said they finished 4-4, right?
Yep.
That sounds about right. And then they squeaked by KC and then won the title. But I was going to ask you.
We talking about.
Oh, no, 18. My bad. That's the year before. The year they lost the Titans. Yeah. The last year. But actually, to your point earlier, Paul, I agree. I think you could start to see it that year too, like towards the end of that Super Bowl year.
The 18 year, and we might, I don't have it in front of me. You might be right. The Dallas game that we're talking about might have actually been down the stretch of the Super Bowl year.
No, it definitely wasn't. No,
it wasn't. Okay, it was the 19 year. Yeah. I actually kind of felt very similar going down the stretch of the 18 season, which is why I didn't dismiss the possibility that they could get hot.
Yeah.
I mean, you remember they lost some in 2018. They had the miracle loss in Miami. Yeah. And they followed that up by going to Pittsburgh and really getting thoroughly outplayed in a game that was a lot closer on the scoreboard than it was on the field. Mm-hmm. And you were like, this team just doesn't have it. What are they going to do? They finished up with a couple of cupcake wins in the division, as they always do. And then they got hot in the postseason. That offense in the Chargers in Chiefs game, the offense was unbelievable in those two games. I know a lot of people talk about the running game, but Brady threw for 350 plus in both of those games, and they scored a ton of points. Yeah, and that's how you win in the postseason. You got to score points.
Yeah, good call. Transitioning back to current year, this was a thought we wanted to ask you about. So even before last night, I think we'd all agree Mac Jones played well last night. Even before last night, we've said I think Mac Jones has been competent, like at a minimum. I think he looks like an NFL quarterback. And then you throw in last night where I think he looked very good. How much, as far as like the play call and, again, before last night, being a little more conservative, do you put a lot of that on Josh, on Mac? Do you think there's limitations that from a play calling standpoint that they're not comfortable with? Or even on top of that, do you see that maybe opening up going forward based on how he handled last night?
Yeah, I do think that they will eventually give him more and more, but there are a few things, and it sounds like you guys are on the same page as me. I keep, at the end of these games, we do a post-game show on Patriots.com, just like everybody else does. And we get a lot of, we have our quarterback. Well, I'm disappointed with the loss, but they have their quarterback for the next, 10, 12 years. And I'm in sort of the mindset that, like, okay, if you say it, I guess it must be true. But I'd like my quarterback for the next decade to be able to score more than 17 points in a game. And until I see that, I'm not going to assume that I have it. Mm-hmm. I like what I've seen from Mac Jones. I think there are some intangibles there that can't be taught that he has. Yep. I think he has some poise. I think he has some aptitude for the position. I think he gets rid of the ball pretty quickly and generally speaking, pretty accurately. But there are also some physical limitations that I think are hard to get around. And we've seen those as well. So like last night, let's talk about it. It sounds like you guys think he played really well last night. I would agree. I think that was the best of his 4 games. The best of his 4 games involved 17 points, 4 sacks, and a pick.
Yeah.
And what should have been another pick to take a field goal off the board at the end of the game, he threw the ball right to Devin White.
Yeah. Good call.
So instead of getting that go-ahead field goal at that time, you would have been a crushing loss throwing a pick to Devin White to sort of close it out. So
sure. Good point.
There's still a lot that I need to see from Mac Jones. Again, I'm very encouraged by what I have seen. I'm just not, I guess, where a lot of my colleagues are. And, well, he's the least of our worries. No, he's right in the middle of the list of my worries. Now, the offensive line is far and away the biggest issue with the offense right now. But I still would like to see Mac Jones make some more plays. So I feel better about the offense going forward. To your point, so Josh McDaniels is going to feel better about him allowing, at the 4th and 3, we could talk about this entire time, should they have gone for it? And I do wonder if the near pick to Devin White, followed by a pass getting batted down on 3rd and 3 and a 2-for-9 performance on 3rd down in general, told Belichick, I'm going to take my one shot to take the lead right now. Yeah. Because if he doesn't convert this 4th down, I don't get any shot to take the lead. Now, I would have gone for it. I think that was crazy, kicking the field goal. If for no other reason, even if he makes it, I'm giving Tom Brady 55 seconds and 2 timeouts. And I know how that ends because I saw that for 20 years.
Yeah. Yeah. Good point. The other thought I thought last night, he looked like he was having fun last night too. Mac, like the game just looked different last night. He was clicking, they're running a little no huddle. It just looked more of like a Patriots offense, like, I don't know if it was maybe the hype for the Brady game and whatnot, but I'm with you, man. That's a really good point. And going back, I know, like, when you go on Felger and Maz and those guys all week talk, that is negative of guys like that can be. That does sound like one of the common things they all agree on. Like, we're good at quarterback. Let's bitch about everything else.
I think already prepared for Wednesday. Yeah, I'm already prepared to argue with them on Wednesday.
Perfect.
And I hate it because of the position that I'm in, where I work. Yeah. I don't want to be, having any significant arguments with people saying, no, Mac Jones isn't the guy. I think he is the guy, but I'm not willing to say that we're set at quarterback. I mean, is he the guy, or is he Andy Dalton or Kirk Cousins?
Oh, gosh.
Maybe Kirk Cousins is a little better, than Andy Dalton. I think he is a competent NFL quarterback, but is he going to be that plus the guy who can get it done with the game on the line and lift others around him? I haven't seen that yet. Now it's 4 games.
Right.
But I do look at Tom Brady back in 2001 when he was getting his feet wet. He found a way to make some of these plays at the end of games to win them. So unfair to compare anybody to Brady, but unfortunately, a lot of Mac Jones apologists have compared him to Brady. So that's one of the reasons why I think it's unfair. But again, my overall Mac Jones take is that I'm very encouraged, probably just not as encouraged as some of my colleagues have been.
I think that's fair. Real quick, before you go, so what were your thoughts preseason? Like, what between Mac, Cam, and a free agent? What were you hoping for?
Between him and Cam, I wanted no part of Cam.
Yeah.
So I was very happy with the way training camp unfolded. I thought he outplayed him the entirety of the summer. I thought he outplayed him in the spring when we watched OTAs. He just looked better at everything. And I was really happy with that Belichick decided to go that direction. And I'll tell you one thing, it's made the first 4 games a lot more enjoyable to watch, knowing that you have someone who, God forbid we get a holding call and it's 3rd and 11 and we don't have to run a draw like we did for the entirety of the 2020 season. So it's been enjoyable to watch the kid play as opposed to watching Cam. I thought it was painful.
It's a nice way to put it. Yeah, I would agree.
Legitimately been over 3 seasons where we haven't felt offensively competent. Because like you said, the 18 season, we won the Super Bowl, but wasn't great from that standpoint. Then the final year, Brady, and then last year. So it was weird last night seeing 2 passing touchdowns. I mean, they weren't bombs or anything.
That was odd.
It was still kind of surreal in a weird way.
Different. Yeah.
What I was going to ask, Paul, is do you think last night's game, because you were talking about, obviously, you work for the Patriots. Do you think last night's game helped quiet a lot of the potential negativity that could have come from the game? Like, I feel like it could have been a 10 and it came out like a 4 because Mac played fairly well. Brady had some surprisingly positive and like Patriot-esque things to say. And then the Belichick meeting with him afterwards.
Yeah, and I would throw the defense in too, which you feel like you want to lean on that defense, and we haven't really seen that so far. And then you got a glimpse of it last night. So yeah, I think there's a lot of positives to take out of the game, and I agree with you. Heading into it, I thought there was a pretty good chance that it was going to be one of those that's really going to deal a blow. I think there's a chance. I don't know. I'm not a big moral victory guy, but I do believe in sort of the confidence building loss. And I think we've seen it here periodically in the past, and the famous one when they lost to the Rams in 2001 in the regular season. Flip side, we saw it work against the Patriots in 2007 when the Giants lost in the regular season finale. The Giants used that as sort of a barometer to say, hey, we can play with these guys if we see them again. I think the Patriots probably took a lot out of that game last night mentally, and we'll see if they can build off of it. I don't know how good they are, but we'll see if they can build off that from a confidence standpoint.
Yeah, that's a good point. I said that last night after the game. I tweeted, I was like, look, I'm not saying I think Patriots going to the Super Bowl, but there were some vibes like that Rams game from 2001, going huge underdogs, greatest show on turf, whatever. And I don't remember what the actual outcome was. It was just a competitive game, more or less, right? Was it similar to last night?
It was 24-17. The Rams ended up having the ball at the end of the game, and they sort of just kept grinding the clock out. They moved all the way down the field and ended up kneeling on the ball to close it out. But it was a good, hard-fought game, and I think a lot of the Rams afterwards said it was as physical a game as they had played.
Oh, okay, that's right.
And it was one of those deals. And I do think, in talking to some of the guys, I remember Damian Woody was one talking to after that game. There were a couple of losses like that season where they felt like, whereas in the past we would have been happy to play well against a good team. And now they had progressed to the point where they were bummed out that they lost an opportunity to beat a good team, and they knew they were now a good team. So I think it can sort of, you walk that line and then you figure out where you fit in. And I think that's what the 2001 team built off that. They didn't lose again. Yeah,
no, that's a good point. And a good point on the Giants too. That's literally the same exact scenario, just we were on the other end of it. Couple quick ones before we let you go. We talked about Felger and Maz earlier. I know you're there weekly during the season. They've been on our show a few times, a lot of those 98.5 guys. What are some of your, I don't even know how I want to phrase this, either like best memories or any of your favorite like heated arguments that you can remember that you got in with those clowns over there?
Yeah, there's probably a lot. I mean, the three of us, and I don't know Jim as well, although I've gotten to know him really well because he ended up becoming our pre and post game host for a short time on Patriots.com. But with Michael and Tony, the three of us worked together about 30 years ago in the Herald Sports Department when we were all coming out of college. And I knew Michael, but Mike and I both went to BU. And we've known each other for a long time. So we have a very good relationship, and there's a comfort level that comes with that. So I know that I can sort of bust their balls. They know they can bust mine, obviously with the theme music and everything. It's all in good fun. I've had a lot of arguments with them because, especially with Mike, because there's a way he has of not really being able to see anything any other way other than his. So he sort of tends, when you oppose his point of view, you can get into an argument. The most recent one that I can think of was just last year when he refused to accept math as a reason why the Patriots weren't going to make the playoffs, because he kept thinking of the Patriots as the Patriots that we came to know. And he just kept saying they will run the table, and, teams like Cleveland will fold because they're never there. And I was like, teams like Buffalo will fold because they were never there. And I was like, do you watch the players that play for these teams and then watch the Patriots every week and the players that were playing for the Patriots and think there's any comparison that, and you guys remember the phrase was the path. There's a path to the playoffs. And I kept saying, no, there's not. And I'm coming from Patriots.com and I'm going on a radio station telling them there's no way the Patriots can make the playoffs with this roster. And there were too many teams in front of them at the time. I think they were like 10th in the conference, and they need 4 different teams to lose like 3 of their last 5 games. And they're trying to tell me there's a path. And I just, no matter how many times I would say, listen, Cleveland's not going to lose to everybody. Baltimore is not going to lose to everybody. Buffalo's already basically got this division clinched, even if they lose to the Patriots on that Monday night game.
Yeah.
I couldn't do it. I couldn't convince them. And it wasn't until they got their doors blown off in that Monday night game that they finally said, you were right.
Yeah. Yep. I hate to say it. I'm trying to think last year. Again, like, as a Patriots just fan, I think it was after the Baltimore win, which I still to this day don't know how it happened. But I think I got trapped too. Hey, they only need to go on like a 5-game winning streak, and that's it.
I think it was the Arizona game that I said, well, I think that made them 5. I think they were 6-6 at that time.
Yeah.
You know, that Arizona game, that was crazy. They had 17 different things fall their way in the last 5 minutes. And then they win that game and everybody got all excited. And then they went to Houston and lost to a terrible Texans team. And that was it. You know, I think that was it. And that just wasn't a very good team last year. That the roster was completely stripped down to bare bones, and they have to rebuild. That's why I'm not, playoffs are bust right now, because I still think that there's a lot of rebuilding to be done, and it's hard to do it with one off season of free agents like they've sort of tried to do it right now.
That's what's tough too, because as great as whatever you want to call it, a moral victory, whatever from last night, like going back to numbers, 1-3 is 1-3. Like that stinks. That's never a good place to be. I know they might have some, I don't even know what you consider a cake game anymore. I think Houston and the Jets are in the near future. I don't know. Jets look decent yesterday.
Jets look like they're getting better anyway. And they gave you all you could handle the first time.
Yeah.
If the quarterback didn't hand you the ball 4 times, that would have been a tractor pull.
Yeah. So yeah, we'll see. But I think going back to your Felger and Matt story, I mean, you started out by saying you're talking math with Felger, and that, how that always goes. Numbers is not their strong suit.
Can't do it.
Were you on last? I don't know if this was when you were on, I don't know if you saw this, when he was doing like the teen argument, like what's considered a teen.
Yeah.
Like,
I was 11 and 12. I was on the next day, and I was making fun of him about that too.
That was a good one. I thought like Murray was going to lose it in the whatever, in like the side studio, but go ahead, Soap. I know you had another before we let him go.
The Ravens game from last year. This is one of my questions, but the Ravens game from last year was another one where it was like, this is whatever's the opposite of a moral victory. That was like an immoral loss, because it was like we shouldn't have won that game.
The false hope game.
Yeah, false hope. Yeah, and that was when Lamar Jackson then came out and said, it's kind of weird how the rain comes down a little heavier when we get the ball. Which some people are saying that happened to Mac Jones last night when the Pats got the ball on the final drive.
That was a weird night last night. That it was periodically just pouring.
Yeah, that was bad.
That was throughout the game. But yeah, there's no doubt at the end of that game when Baltimore got the ball back, it was as hard as I saw it rain all night.
It was like sideways, like tsunami type rain, like out of nowhere.
A little outside the box. Start one, bench one, cut one. N'Keal Harry, Aaron Dobbins, Chad Ochocinco in their times with
Patriots.
The Patriots.
Chad Ochocinco.
Yeah.
Okay.
So prime Ochocinco.
Yeah.
I don't have a great candidate to start one.
Yeah, I wouldn't start any of them.
I would probably start Ochocinco, but I wouldn't feel great about it.
Sure.
And then I would have probably N'Keal Harry just to give him a shot. I'd keep him, and then I'd cut Aaron Dobson. I think Aaron Dobson and N'Keal Harry are very similar in that when I watched their college tape, I didn't see either one of them get open all that often. But I think N'Keal Harry is bigger and more physically gifted than Aaron Dobson was. So I would keep him, but I don't have a lot of faith in the N'Keal Harry experiment. I'm hoping that maybe he catches another pass or two next week.
That'd be sick.
Trade him. And they can trade.
That'd be great. Oh,
I really do think that's the long play is try to get him back, show everybody that he's healthy, and before he, pulls a hamstring again or something, get rid of him.
Do you think there's any with the Patriots, another team, like any hope for N'Keal Harry being a player? He doesn't seem like a serviceable player to me.
The only football player inside that body.
I agree with you. The only thing I could see for him is perhaps maybe the system is just not right for him. It's maybe too complicated and he has to think too much, but I just don't see the athleticism to get open.
Right.
He looks the part. I mean, the guy is
Sure.
like Adonis. I mean, but
Mhm.
he doesn't separate. He doesn't separate on the practice field. Every catch that he makes is difficult. It's contested. And I just don't think 50-50 balls are no way for a wide receiver to go through life when every play is a 50-50 ball.
Yeah.
So that's my Nikhil. I mean, and that's what my view of him has been since I saw him step foot on the practice field the first time as a first round pick, as a rookie.
What were your thoughts on draft night? Like, did you like the pick going
I
into
did.
it? Knowing some
I
of the
did.
guys
I was
behind
wrong.
him? Yeah.
I was wrong.
That's okay.
I love. First of all, I love the idea of it to take a.
Oh, I love the idea of him being a great
physical
player.
wide receiver in the first round. I loved it.
Same.
But they didn't get the right one.
I think it's got it. There's an aspect of like salt in the wound too, when you just see the guys taken behind him, like Debo and DK and AJ Brown.
And for a couple of years too. You look at there was a couple of the Patriots. Part of their problem with the drafting that they've had recently, and hopefully the last couple of classes look like there's a little bit more promise to them.
Uh-huh.
They needed wide receivers, and they passed one year with an incredibly deep class. Then they took one the next year and took the wrong one in another incredibly deep class. I think that's it's Terry McLaurin and DK Metcalf, as you said, Debo Samuel. There's a lot of guys that were taken after N'Keal Harry that have been a lot better. AJ Brown, there's a lot of players that have come out and they just didn't get the right one.
Yeah.
I thought the number change was going to rejuvenate him.
I don't know.
You didn't like what you saw last night?
Did he have a catch last night?
Nope.
Didn't he have a penalty?
One catch. He had one catch and he drew a penalty, even though it wasn't a penalty.
Sounds about right. Yeah. Well, real quick, that's the other thing I was going to mention when you're talking about Mac Jones and kind of, how he played, but the sacks and the picks and stuff. He had a lot of calls. They had a lot of calls.
Oh yeah, they don't score. Their first touchdown had 3 defensive penalties.
Oh boy.
Two of them were really ticky-tack.
I would agree with that. That's the one thing that stood out to me. Last question from me. So you've been working with the Patriots in the NFL for quite some time now. I assume you do some travel to other stadiums. What are some of the stadiums you've enjoyed visiting, and maybe some ones on the bucket list that you haven't had a chance to see?
Yeah, some of the new ones I haven't seen, but I think
like the one in LA. That one in LA looks freaking nuts.
I think it was 13 seasons, 13 or 14 seasons. I traveled to every game.
Nice.
But yeah, SoFi, which we'll see tonight in the Monday Night Football game. I haven't seen that. San Francisco's new place I haven't been to. Dallas's new place I haven't been to. That might be it. I think I might have seen all the rest. I really like some of the indoor ones. In general, I don't love indoor football, but Houston's, I don't know what the names of them are anymore, but it was Reliance Stadium for a long time. Ford Field in Detroit. Loved those two venues. The Atlanta Super Bowl, that's an interesting dome too. That was kind of cool. Minnesota's dome we had, I think that was the Philadelphia one.
Yep.
So I've seen most of them. In terms of outside, I think Denver was a nice one, Invesco Field. Again, I don't know what it's called now.
Mm-hmm.
That was kind of a cool place to watch a game too. Most of they all kind of popped up around the same time. Gillette and Heinz Field and Lincoln. In Philadelphia. Invesco, they're probably all within 5 years of each other when they opened, 5-10 years. Yeah. And for the most part, they were all pretty nice, but I kind of liked the indoor ones.
Last one for me, Paul, and we'll let you go. Funniest interaction with Bill Belichick.
Well, there's a couple, and sometimes they can go on either side real quick. I wrote something that he didn't really like back in like 2003-ish, something about the conditioning run, and he kind of, didn't like the way I characterized something. And
wait, the hill? You talking about the hill? No,
this was even before that. They had when guys open up training camp on PUP and you don't know about an injury, or NFI and you don't know about an injury, sometimes it can be the conditioning run. And he told us some players had injuries. So that kind of led you to believe that if he didn't tell you someone had an injury, they must have failed the conditioning run. So I wrote all of this. The details of it aren't all that important, but he didn't like it because I insinuated that he didn't care about his players. And He didn't like that at all. And sure enough, he had let me know and via email, his assistant let me know that he didn't think this was fair and blah, 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 blah. Boy. And then I had come in that morning. It was a training camp. It was during camp. And I saw my email and I was like, oh, geez. This is really the first time that I had encountered this. Yeah. So I leave my office. I walk down to go through the concourse because I had to walk up to go to the elevator to go up to the press box where the press conference was to start training camp that day. And sure enough, I get downstairs and I turn the corner and who's there? Bill Belichick. And we had the quietest, most awkward walk through the entire length of the stadium in the concourse until we got into the elevator. And then he turned to me and told me he thought my story was total shit. And then he repeated it, total shit.
Yeah.
And he told me that he didn't, and I said, well, I mean, I'd like to explain what I wrote. He goes, I think you had all you needed to say, you said in your story, which was, again, total shit. Yeah. And I was Thanks, like, Bill. Okay, good talk. Good talk. So, and that was kind of it. And he really hasn't been overly talkative to me since. That was a long time ago.
And that's what it sounds like. Like you do one thing, whether it's 20 years ago, 5 years ago, and that's it.
You get one chance. Jeez, and he's the arbiter. He's the only one who decides whether or not it's something that violated what he thought was right. Yep. So now I will say this, incredibly consistent, incredibly fair. He treats everybody the same. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to say he treats everybody like shit, but he treats everybody the same for the most part.
Ask Tom Brady.
Except for the national guys. He has his favorites in the national league, but the local guys, he kind of, Mike Reese is as professional as they come. Mm-hmm. And I've seen him be short and curt with Mike, just like he was with me that day. So I think he's pretty consistent in that regard. But the funny follow-up with that is, so I probably go 10 years without really having any kind of like substantive talk with him in the interim. And we were doing, I'm part of the pregame, the preseason broadcast now. So when we do like the production meetings for those, I'm in there and I generally will ask a question just to get one in there. And I'm kind of quiet. Well, once, he starts talking, and again, he hasn't really given me the time of day in 10 plus years. And he starts talking about cornerback play and technique. And he goes, Paul, come over here. And he's like moving me around. He's like, so Paul goes up for the pass and he makes me go up like this. And I'm like trying to, and he's going in demonstrating the technique that he's teaching his corners, not playing the ball, not looking, for the ball, but playing the, reading the receiver. And he's going through like cornerback 101. It's like he's Ty Law on me. And I'm trying to and he's talking to me like I'm his best friend. Like, so Paul's going to make this play here and Paul's going to do this. And I'm like, you haven't said the word Paul in like 10 years. And now like in this production meeting in front of all these people, it's like Paul this, Paul that. So like just he's a different kind of guy. He's a different sort of guy. And it's been great to watch how fascinating it is to see a guy that's at that level. At the very height of his profession, to watch him and Tom for 20 years, two of the best that ever did it at what they do. It's been kind of cool to just be along for the ride.
That's a weird story. That almost seems like Belichick, like mind games. Like he knows you're going to go home and be like, what just happened?
Oh, I went home and told my wife, I said, you never guess who used me as a demonstration today. Yeah. She's like, is that normal? I'm like, no,
hell no.
Yeah, Paul, take 2 steps to the left before you make the in cut like you usually do.
It's like a teacher like calling a kid up like in the middle of class or something.
Oh no, and I remember Christian Fourier was actually in it, and he was the one that was asking the questions about the receiver stacking the defender and doing he obviously Christian's a football player, so he knows absolutely everything that he's explaining, and he's using me as like the tackling dummy to show. And it's just it was bizarre.
Where did this conversation take place? Was this in a players meeting or like where physically in the stadium did it take place?
It was in in the television studios that we have.
Oh, in gotcha.
And this was when Christian was retired. Christian was part of the broadcast with us.
I would hate to be on the receiving end of just like subject line from Bill Belichick at NewEnglandPatriots.com.
That's got to be
subject.
Got to be a pit in the
total
stomach.
Shit.
Oh yeah. I got a few.
Read your latest column. ... My thoughts.
I'm gonna guess this one's not gonna end well.
Yeah. Boy, oh boy. But all right. I mean, I know we kept you a little longer than we said, so I apologize about that. We'll let you get out of here. Before we do, where's the best place for everyone to find you online, Paul, and keep up with your work?
Yeah, I mean, I think the best place to follow us is right on patriots.com. We do a podcast Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays from 12 to 2 Eastern time called Patriots Unfiltered. Mm-hmm. And it's just a radio show, just like we're doing right now. We're just four guys that, sit around shooting the shit, and we talk about the Patriots and pretty much anything else that comes up that day. Nice. And we have a lot of fun doing it. We have a pretty loyal fan base, around the world. For the Patriots, we do pre and post game radio every game day, 2 hours before, 2 hours after. And there's a lot of different TV shows. We have Patriots Unfiltered TV that airs on Channel 38 on my whatever, what is that, My 38?
Yeah.
And I think that's Friday nights, all access, Patriots flagship show. I'm a part of that with Mike Reese. I love doing that with Mike. And actually when Mike left the Patriots, he had my job, and he left, and I came and replaced him. So we've had a really good relationship for a long time, and he's one of my closest colleagues, I would say. But all the guys that you've had on the show, I would put in that category.
Nice.
Mike Giardi, and you mentioned Tony and Mike and all those guys. Jim Murray. I have a lot of respect for a lot of those guys, and enjoy working with them for a long time.
Well, good stuff, man. Again, appreciate your time. Good insight on the game. Then you're on Felger and Mavs Wednesday, you said?
Wednesday is a sunshine.
Yeah, hell of a week.
Absolutely.
Oh, boy. I didn't catch today, but.
Good on you for putting up with you must be happy that this game is behind you, kind of.
I am. And like I said, I was pleasantly surprised with the game living up to it. I just figured the game I'm like everybody else. I picked 34-16. I didn't think it was going to be a competitive game.
That's pretty much what Dan and I predicted almost to the T.
I was actually surprised how many people picked. If you watch the NBC broadcast, they go round table and do their picks. I think there were 3 or 4 Patriots picks. I think it was Harrison per usual, Mike Tirico maybe, and a couple others picked Patriots.
Yeah, I did catch that when I was walking up after we did our pregame show. That all the picks were coming up. I was like, I see a lot of Patriots there. Everybody else had that Vegas thing going on that was getting a lot of attention late in the week. I guess they knew something.
Yeah, maybe.
They knew the refs were in on it, I guess.
Yeah, right. But all right, Paul Perillo, Patriots.com. Appreciate your time, man. We'll talk to you guys soon. Peace.
All right, guys.